fortitude, and temperance for this incredibly important job. Mr. Chairman, it is truly an honor for me to introduce Pam Bondi to this committee and to our country here today.
Jake, and soon-to-be niece Savannah. My brother Brad, a brilliant lawyer. My sister-in-law Tandy, and my nephews Justin, who just got a 4.0 at UVA. Rex, great college tennis player. Brad, great tennis player. Is Rhea here? And my niece, my beautiful niece Rhea, and the little guy is in school because he's 10. My friends, Leslie, Kathy, Dina, Tiffany, Kim, Paula, and so many of my former coworkers. And Ranking Member Durbin, if you want to get dirt on me, these women have known me since I was a child. Seriously, most of them. So thank you for indulging me in that. They've all made a very long trip to be here. And thank you for holding my hearing as well and not postponing it. I appreciate that. Thank you all. From the moment I interned at the state attorney's office in Tampa, Florida, all I wanted to do was be a prosecutor. The Supreme Court certified me, and I had 4 jury trials while still in law school. Lost most of them, but had 4 jury trials and never wanted to do anything else. I continued my career there, trying everything from DUIs, domestic violence cases, capital murder cases, the whole gamut. I became a lead trial attorney in courtroom every day, trying career criminals, was deputy chief of a division, and then ultimately was felony bureau chief, and eventually left to become Florida's 37th Attorney General for the state of Florida. Nothing has impacted my career more than my experience as a state prosecutor, because I got to know and still keep in touch with many victims and their families from when I was a prosecutor.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Upon
We're
becoming
watching the
Attorney
confirmation
General
hearing
in
of Pam
2011,
Bondi, the
I
Florida
proudly
Attorney
served
General,
for
now
2
wanting to be the
terms.
Attorney
I
General
was
of the
term
United
limited.
States.
I would probably
Introducing
be
herself,
right
introducing
now
her
had I
family.
not been
Senator Dick
had
Durbin
my
introduced
term
her.
limits.
There are some controversial things about her that we will go over, including being a party to a fake fraudulent elector scheme, at least carrying the water for Donald Trump and saying that there was something nefarious about the 2020 election. Pam Bondi is a Trump acolyte, a very, very MAGA type Republican. The reason she is here, remember, Matt Gaetz got knocked out of it because of all of the allegations against him and the scathing congressional investigative report on who he is. Now, again, our mission here is to be honest about this, but also this is not normal. These are not normal picks. So good morning. I am in Washington, D.C. I told you that I would be on the road. I am in Washington, D.C. I'm here for to see what's going on in Washington before the Biden administration leaves, but also to do an event on media at the National Press Club. So I am their honored guest this morning to talk about the press and to talk about independent media and about they have been really enamored and intrigued by the platform that we have built here as we speak to folks who are in this, the YouTubes of the world, the streamers, the Spotifys of the world, the TikToks of the world. We're pioneers in doing live news coverage on these platforms, and the National Press Club wants to talk to me about that. So I think that's a very big indeed honor, and I will be there today. And we'll put up how you can tune in. There's a link where you can tune in and watch as well. Another MAGA dog and pony show. Absolutely. Was Matt Gaetz a plant so she would be a shoe-in, says Lundis Smart. Hey, listen, that is a very good question. That's what folks have posited, that they thought that perhaps Donald Trump thought it would be easier to get a Pam Bondi in, and so he put Matt Gaetz up. But I'm not so sure that is. Matt Gaetz, he was hoping to get someone in who would have who could just take all of these cases that are against him, these legal cases, and just throw them out as Attorney General. The Attorney General has the ability to be able to do that. Remember, Merrick Garland, folks are not happy about him because they believe that he should have gotten to work on prosecuting Donald Trump earlier for January 6th and for trying to overturn an election, and that he did it so late that Donald Trump was able to run out the clock, which he did, and become president of the United States. So much of this really, quite frankly, is Merrick Garland's fault. Peggy Geary, thank you very much. So we appreciate all of you joining us. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you like and subscribe. And we're going to sit back. We're going to listen to Pam Bondi for a little bit. But she's talking about what she wants to do and who she is. But we have to remember what she wants to do and who she is, which is very important. A host of Trump nominees are going to sit for questioning before the Senate today, like Pete Hegseth did yesterday, which was quite the hearing. I don't know if it's going to be as fiery today for Pam Bondi. It might be, and here's why. Considering her efforts to help Donald Trump overturn the election, to keep up the lie that there was fraudulent, especially as the Attorney General, the former Florida Attorney General. She was chosen by Donald Trump to serve as the U.S. Attorney General hours after his choice, Matt Gaetz, withdrew from consideration after a federal sex trafficking investigation. Yes, Matt Gaetz was part of a federal sex trafficking investigation, an ethics probe that made his ability to be confirmed dubious. It really, they said no. After that, Donald Trump stuck by him for a long time until that report came out. They started to figure out what was in that report. 59-year-old Pam Bondi has long been in Trump's orbit. Her name had been floated during his first term as a potential candidate for the nation's highest law enforcement role. If confirmed by the Republican-led Senate, Bondi would instantly become one of the most closely watched members of Trump's cabinet, given the Republicans' threat to pursue retribution against perceived adversaries and concern among Democrats that he will look to bend the Justice Department in his will. And considering how Donald Trump has said he's going to go after his political enemies, which was much of the concern from Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois this morning, calling on Pam Bondi to be independent and to hold Donald Trump to account, especially if he asked her to do something that was completely against the law and was outside the bounds as it relates to the Constitution and norms. So Senator Grassley, Chuck Grassley, is the chairman of these hearings. He's a little bit of a slower player here, one of the senior members of the Senate. And also, we're keeping an eye on the fires because there's a scathing report coming from the Los Angeles Times. So we will listen in now, and then I'll get back to you. So stand by.
My office before Christmas.
This has only prolonged the terrible
Should you be
situation in Israel
confirmed,
and Gaza.
144
In spite
letters
of
will
the outgoing
be your
administration's
responsibility.
policy, Israel.
The responses I have received so far fall in two categories. First, they weren't answered at all. Second, I received a response, but it didn't fully respond. Said another way, the Justice Department merely sent me words on a piece of paper. So, should you be confirmed, you'll have an obligation to respond even to the minority and consider a letter from them, even if my signature's not on it, as they want information. Will you commit to responding to my oversight requests as well as the requests of other members of the committee?
Chairman, either I or my top staff will personally review the letters and do everything we can to respond to you.
Your tenure as Florida Attorney General was impressive. You fought against pill mills, human trafficking. You eliminated a backlog of rape test kits in state labs. You fought against organized retail theft, and you were known to stand for law and order. With such achievements, it's easy to see why the people of Florida reelected you in 2014 and why President-elect Trump nominated you to serve as the nation's chief law enforcement officer. So this gives you a chance to tell us on this committee and the people of this country what you're proud of as your record as Attorney General of Florida.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I was truly honored to serve the people of the state of Florida for 8 years, but it was a team effort. I had great people around me, many of whom are in this room today. And we did a lot. We did a lot to fight crime, and I've been reminiscing a lot since I was asked to take this nomination. Opioids, as I talked about, were a top priority right when I took office. When I was running for office, I went through the entire state of Florida. Parents were walking up to me, handing me pictures of their children who were deceased from opioid abuse. After I was elected, I took those pictures and I framed them in my office as a goal of stopping that fight, which I talked about in my opening statement. And if U.S. Attorney General, I'll bring those pictures back out and they will be there to inspire me on the further drug abuse we're facing throughout this country. We also learned that something else was happening. Pregnant women were having babies as a result of being opioid dependent. We call it neonatal abstinence syndrome. We fought to educate mothers. We fought that issue as well. Fentanyl was wreaking havoc in our country, but it was just getting started. I actually fought my own party a bit on scheduling fentanyl because at that time people thought it was something you merely got in the hospital on a patch after surgery. Apples and oranges, and boy, do we all know that now, the difference. Fentanyl is raging throughout our country, and I will do everything I can to fight that with the agencies that fall under the Department of Justice. Human trafficking became a top priority for me as Attorney General. I had the opportunity on a bipartisan trip to go to Mexico, and the one thing I found out there, they were doing better than we were. They had safe houses. I saw things I never dreamed I would see, and all of these things in my past have formed the person I am right now sitting here before you. I came back to Florida. We started a human trafficking council, and we partnered with others, and we expanded and added safe houses in the state of Florida.
You guys heard me.
I don't know how
This is
many
the
are in this
beginning,
country
really.
right now.
Softball question
but I would like
from
to partner
Senator
with
Chuck
those.
Grassley to discuss, why she was reelected in 2014. He's going to give her, a softball question to start so that she can really just sort of toot her own horn about what she did as the Attorney General. And I expect the questions to get much harder, especially from Democrats, and election denial and really election fraud by the former president, as he's accused of. She's going to get some tough questions about why did she go along with that, especially as the chief law enforcement officer of Florida. And so why would she be qualified at this moment to be the chief law enforcement officer in the United States if she went along with this whole fraudulent idea that the election was stolen? Let's listen back in.
Most of that's because of patriotic whistleblowers who found the fraud and brought the cases forward at their own risk. The Supreme Court has long upheld the law's constitutionality, but I want you to know, in your view, is the False Claims Act constitutional? Before you answer that, one time in the 1990s, one of the attorney generals said it wasn't constitutional, and when that same person by the name of Barr was back 5 years ago to be attorney general, he said it was constitutional. So if confirmed, will you commit?
Oh my God, this is
answer that
painful.
first question. Do you think it's
Look,
constitutional?
Chuck Grassley,
Would you
as I
defend
said,
the
is
Constitution?
one of the senior members of the Senate, and his questions are a little longer, a little slower, again, giving her softball questions. We want to know about, again, what qualifies her to be the chief law enforcement officer, especially, and she had a case against Donald Trump. You guys remember, I don't know if you guys know about this, but the Trump University thing, she filed a suit against him. He gave her a donation to her campaign and she dropped it. Now, allegedly, folks said she did it because of the donation. She saw the political wins, and we'll talk about that. Let's listen, Dick Durbin. This is some real questioning now.
At issue, I believe, in this nomination hearing is not your competence nor your experience. At issue is your ability to say,
Answer that first question. Do you think it's constitutional? Would you defend the constitutionality of it?
I
before the
would
Supreme-
defend the
What happened? The
constitutionality, of
speed
course,
went
of the False
backwards. I'm
Claims
not
Act,
sure what happened.
Senator.
I just
Last
happened
question,
not
if
sure.
confirmed, would you commit to continuing
Say again?
DOJ's defense of the constitutionality of it? And will you assure?
I'm not sure what happened either. It was on
staff
the
and funding
channel.
levels to
Yeah, there's a technical issue here. I think we should, Andy, look for another feed.
Senator,
I don't know if you can do that in the background until,
especially
and then we can catch up,
with
because-
whistleblowers as well, and the protection and the money it brings back to our country. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your answers. Senator.
okay, here we go.
Thank you,
We'll start from
Senator
the beginning of
Grassley.
Dick
Ms.
Durbin.
Bondi,
Maybe it's
if
better
you're
for you guys because you'll get to
successful
hear the
in
beginning
your
of Dick
nomination,
Durbin, and we'll
this
cut it off
Democrat
here.
would like to give you 3 words of advice. Answer Grassley's letters. You'll never hear
And
the end of it.
By
if
the
you
way,
don't.
Dick Durbin is right. This is not about, her background or qualifications or
issue,
whatever, but whether she's
I
going
believe in this
to
nomination
uphold the law.
hearing is not your competence nor your experience. At issue is your ability to say no. More than any other cabinet official, the Attorney General has to be prepared to put the Constitution first and even tell the President of the United States you're wrong. The political danger and personal costs of such a decision are well documented. You have only to ask former Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, whom Donald Trump sacked for lack of loyalty. And so I have 3 basic questions I'd like to ask you. Most Americans believe that central to the peaceful transition of power in a democracy is the acceptance of the results of an election. To my knowledge, Donald Trump has never acknowledged the legal results of the 2020 election. Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden
Good
is the
question.
President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States. There was
Not
a
an
peaceful
answer.
transition of power. President Trump
Not an answer.
left office and was overwhelmingly elected in 2024.
Do you have any doubts that
Same
Joe Biden had
kind
the
of
majority
answer
of votes, electoral votes necessary to be elected
that they
president in
give.
2020?
Roe v.
You know,
Wade is the law
Senator,
of the
all I
land.
can tell you as a prosecutor is from my firsthand experience. And I accept the results. I accept, of course, that Joe Biden is president of the United States. But what I can
Still not
tell you
admitting that it
is
wasn't
what
fraudulent.
I saw firsthand when I went to Pennsylvania as an advocate for the campaign. I was an advocate for the campaign, and I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw
An
many things
advocate
there.
and
But do I
also
accept the
a law
results? Of
enforcement
course I
person
do.
that
Do I
has to
agree with
abide
what
by the
happened
law
in
and the
Penn?
truth.
I saw so much. No one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country.
She's
We should
not
all
answering your
want our
question.
elections to be free and fair, and the rules and the laws to be followed.
I think that question deserved a yes or no. And I think the length of your answer is an indication that you weren't prepared to answer
Thank you,
yes.
Dick Durbin.
Have you heard the recording of President Trump on January 2nd, 2021, when he
Keep in
urged the
mind, she did
Secretary of
not
State
answer
of
that
Georgia
question.
to,
Now let's
quote,
see what she answered about
find
11,780
11,780 votes
votes.
and
Let's
declare
see.
him the winner of that state?
No, I've heard about it through clips, but no, Senator, I've not heard it.
What was your reaction to President Trump making that call?
How could she not hear that?
I would have to listen to the tape, Senator.
And she's heard that.
Well, the
Who
quote
hasn't?
that I give you
Have
is
you guys heard that call?
He
Come
said
on.
to the Georgia Secretary of State, find 11,780 votes.
Do you have the entire context of that call? I feel like it was much longer than
Oh,
that and may have
it
been
is.
taken out.
Come
It was an hour
on,
long.
lady.
Right.
Guys,
You can certainly
this is an
listen to
answer.
it. I
She's
hope you
not
will.
going to do it. She's going to be a
Every
Trump
American should.
sycophant, and
As a
she's just
former
going to do whatever he
prosecutor,
wants.
are you
There's
not
no one in the
concerned that
country who has
President
not
of the
heard
United
that phone
States
call.
called a state election official and asked him to find enough votes to change the results of the election?
Senator, I have not listened to the hour-long conversation, but it's my understanding that is not what he asked him to do.
You need to listen to it. Let me ask a third question. Do you believe that
What?
the
That is
January
not-
6 rioters who have been
guys.
convicted of violent assaults on police
you
officers
kidding me?
should be pardoned?
This is
Senator,
unbelievable.
if
That is
confirmed as
she is
Attorney
starting
General of
this.
the United States, the pardons, of course, fall under the president. But if asked to look at those cases, I will look at each case and advise on a case-by-case basis, just as I did my entire career as a prosecutor.
I can't believe she's
You
starting
also
this off.
advise the
Now
president on
now
pardons
he's
as part
asking
of
her
your
about pardoning
responsibility as
January
Attorney
6th.
General.
She
And
will.
so I'm
She's
asking
going to
you,
do whatever he
do you
wants.
believe that those who've been
She lied.
convicted
Everyone
of
has
the
heard that
January
phone
6
call.
riot, violent assaults on our police officers
Ask
should
her
be
again,
pardoned?
please.
That's a simple question.
So, Senator, I have not seen any of those files, of course. If confirmed and if asked to advise the president, I will look at each and every file. But let me be very clear in speaking to you. I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
Oh my God.
Let me ask you about your work
Guys.
as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners.
Are Americans going to
You did
stand
not
for
list your
this?
current
She
position
has
as a
not
partner at the
answered
lobbying
any
firm
question
of the work you've done
honestly.
for your
She is a
Ballard
joke,
Partner
Linda. This is a joke.
such as
What is
lobbying
going
for the
on
country
here?
of Qatar for
Are we going to allow this to
$115,000 a
happen
month,
for the next
and
4
for corporate
years?
giants, Amazon and Uber, when
Very
when you
rehearsed.
asked
There is
about
no way
conflicts of
she
interest.
did not
Why do
hear.
you believe
Let's
your
just
work
say,
as a lobbyist does not constitute
let's
potential
just say she
conflicts of
didn't hear
interest?
it.
Well,
Shouldn't she
Senator,
have
first,
prepared
that
for
was
that
the amount
question?
my firm received. I believe
Didn't she know as the
multiple
Attorney General of the
people
United States she
represented
would
the
be
country of
asked about
Qatar
that? That's one of the main
within
things.
my
And
firm. My role, and
as
I'm
someone who's
very
an
proud of the work that
advocate,
I did.
she
It was a
said, for the
short time, and I wish it had been
campaign
longer for Qatar, was
and a law
anti-human
enforcement
trafficking
officer,
efforts
it
leading
is her
into the
duty and
World
her
Cup,
job
which is
to
something I'd
listen
like to
to
talk
that.
about later, too. I was
That is a
registered
lie.
as
I'm
FARA,
sorry, it's a total
along
lie.
with
It's
many
bullshit.
members of my firm. That was the sole portion of my representation for Qatar. Now, if there are any conflicts with anyone I represented in private practice, I would consult with the career ethics officials within the department and make the appropriate decision. I would also like to point out to you, I don't believe that I would be the first Attorney General who has represented and advocated for businesses in their past.
Of course not. The question is whether you will recuse yourself from any case involving your Ballard clients. One of those clients was the GEO Group, was it not?
Andy, a little more volume on the
Yes.
feed, please.
A private prison company you lobbied for. It manages correctional
Thank you.
institutions and detention facilities. The GEO Group has
These are
faced
conflict
criticism
of
for
interest
safety
questions,
violations,
and on
inadequate
conflict of
health care,
interest
and poor
questions,
management. U.S.
this is
Immigration
really
and
important
Customs
stuff. By the
Enforcement
way,
is
make sure you
GEO's
guys hit the
largest
thumbs
source
up,
of revenue.
and
Under the
make
Trump
sure if you
administration,
haven't
GEO
subscribed,
stands
do
to
it
earn hundreds
as
of
we're
millions
listening
of
to this. But
dollars
I got to say,
by
this is
detaining
bullshit, guys.
immigrants if there is this
Someone
mass
who wants to be
deportation.
the Attorney General
Would
of the
you
United States will
sense
say, I
any
have not
conflict of
heard
interest if
Donald
you're
Trump's
asked to
call
judge the performance of this government
to
contract?
Georgia, to the
Senator, I will
election official in
consult with
Georgia,
the
asking
career ethics
if she
officials
wants to
within the
be
Department of Justice and make the
in the
appropriate
Trump
decision.
administration, and she
Thank you,
didn't.
Mr.
She had not heard that
Senator
call
Graham.
in the last
Thank you.
4
Congratulations.
years. Are you kidding
I got to
me?
say that John's family was from South Carolina.
The upstate, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a pass on that. From Anderson, by the way. So, listen, President Trump
W,
asked
you're
a
right.
bunch of us,
Bullshit.
who would you pick for Attorney General? How many of you got asked that on our side? Probably didn't ask Dick, but he asked me. I said Pam Bondi. That's like an easy
All right,
decision.
here comes.
I couldn't think of anybody more
Lindsey Graham.
qualified that he knew, that he trusted. And
Lindsey
it's okay to have, you were his lawyer,
Lindsey
right?
Graham is all over the.
Yes, sir. I
I
represented
hate
him
Trump. I love
when
him.
they tried
but
to
I hate him,
impeach him
but I
the
love
first
him.
time
And now
as
he's
part of
gonna
White
kiss
House
Pam
Counsel
Bondi's,
Office of Special
you know what,
Counsel.
rear end here. That's what's
Being
gonna
Trump's lawyer prepares you for many things. So, yeah, you have a longstanding relationship with the president. He trusts you. That's a good thing. That's probably why President Kennedy picked his brother, Bobby Kennedy. I guess you can say no to your older brother. I'm sure he would. But this idea there's something bad is ridiculous. Who do you pick? You pick people you know. You pick people you trust, people that you're qualified. I'm glad he picked you. He knows you, he trusts you, and you're highly qualified. So the idea that there's something wrong with that is just absolutely ridiculous.
How about why
So
weren't
let's
you the
talk
first
about,
pick if he believed in you so much?
the job you're about to have here. Do you support making certain drug cartels in Mexico foreign terrorist organization?
Senator,
Oh,
I
God.
personally went to Mexico. I personally dealt with these cartels when I was a state prosecutor, and they are a grave and violent threat
You
to
consider-
our
I almost
country.
feel,
Yes, Senator.
Advising the president. Good, good. Now,
I
when
am
it comes
embarrassed
to
to even bother you
Crossfire
guys with this.
Hurricane,
I feel
are
like
those days over
I'm
if you're
wasting your
Attorney General?
time by showing you this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it's also
Lake and
important
Riley, are you familiar with that case?
Sadly, I am,
for you to
Senator
see
Graham.
this, that it's a
You
dog
know
and pony
why,
show. That
the man who
and she's
killed
probably
her
going to get
was released from custody?
confirmed.
He was paroled to the detention.
But she has
capacity
not
at the Central
answered any
Processing
question
Center in
directly. And now
El
it's
Paso,
going on about
Texas.
drug cartels and
Now,
whatever. Of course, if you're the Attorney
that's
General of the
not your
United States, you
call.
don't want
You'll
drug
be
cartels
DOJ.
to be have any
But do you
influence in the
agree with
United.
me
That's
that the
this
statutes
is
regarding parole
what they're
doesn't
trying to do
allow
here is say the
parole to be based
Biden
on we
administration
don't have
bad.
detention beds?
Let's not talk about Pam Bondi.
Nothing
Let's not
that
talk about the
statute
issues that
would
need to be
authorize
spoken
parole
about.
based on
That
lack
you
of
lied about
capacity.
an election, et cetera,
Are
et
you
cetera,
familiar
et
with that
cetera.
statute?
That you
Yes,
were
sir,
a
and
party
that's
to that.
frightening.
Yeah, well,
That
it's
you can't
frightening.
answer the
Are you gonna
questions.
fix it?
I am going to do everything in
I'm,
my
I,
power
I'm sorry
to
that you
fix
guys
it
are
and
having
confirm
to
that
deal with
You're
this
gonna
as
advise
Americans
President Trump
and
we
as
need more
members
beds.
of this
Tom
channel.
Homan's the guy's gonna do this.
Do you want to
but the
continue
US
watching
Attorney
this?
General say we need
Should we
more
talk
bed
about something
space
else, the
so
fires?
Lincoln Riley
Because I think
never
this is
happens
complete
again?
bullshit.
Senator, my job,
I
if
just, I
confirmed as
got to be
Attorney
honest with you.
General, will be to keep
And anyone who
Americans
treats this
safe.
as normal
think
And
we
or
that
need
doesn't
includes-
call out Pam Bondi not
and that
answering
includes
direct
having
questions
enough
or
space for
saying
violent
that she has
criminals,
not heard the phone
people
call
that
to
shouldn't
Brad
be in this
Raffensperger and
country
others
who have
down in
committed violent
Georgia.
crimes.
To the
And Laken
public.
Riley is one
Now
of
they're
them.
talking about Lincoln Riley. Let's listen.
41,000 beds in this country to detain people. We got like millions of people here illegally. We let this dude go because we didn't have any place to put him. I hope those days are over. And if, Tom, you're listening out there, I hope you'll create enough detention space to make sure we don't find this dilemma ever again. Do you think we're at war? And if so, who with?
Oh, Senator, we're at war on so many
Oh, my
fronts.
God. Lindsay,
Are we
Of
at war
course-
with ISIS?
take your
Of
lipstick
course,
off.
we're at war with
They're,
ISIS.
they're at war with us. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely,
Do
Senator.
you think since our withdrawal from Afghanistan, threats to our homeland have gone up from ISIS?
Yes.
Okay, March 7th, 2024, General Corella. I assess ISIS-K retains the capability and will to attack the U.S. and Western interests abroad in as little as 6 months with little or no warning. That's March of 2024. General McKenzie, ISIS-K has a strong desire to attack the United States after it began to grow in Afghanistan following U.S. exit in August 2021. He also stated the threat to ISIS-K from ISIS-K is growing. Major General Quantock, the U.S. remains target number one for ISIS-K. Do you agree with that?
Here's a question.
Senator,
How about, what are you
I
going to
don't have
do
my
about the
security
number
clearance,
one
but from
terror threat
everything
in the
I've
United
read and
States,
heard,
which
ISIS is
is
one of the
homegrown
greatest
domestic
threats.
terror,
Okay, well,
which
when
is
you get your
committed
security
mainly
clearance,
by
you're going to
right-wing
find out these
extremist
people are
groups?
coming after us and they
Are you
want to
going to
kill
go
us.
along with another Muslim ban
So,
because
I
there's
would
this
like
thing
to
about
have
foreign terrorism? Yeah, foreign
strategy
terrorism is a
to
problem and it's
deal with
scary.
the
But our
ISIS
biggest
threat that's
threat to
beyond just the
terror
law
here is
enforcement
domestic
model.
terror. What
Does
are you
that
going to do
make
about
sense
that?
to you that
Are
we
you
should
afraid to
use every
tackle it
tool in
because
the
most of
toolbox?
those people who participate in that
Senator, that
are
includes
white
wrapping in our
white
state
men
and local
and not some
officials
scary
too,
brown
and better
foreigner from
cooperation
overseas?
throughout our country
Are we
and
going to
our
deal
world.
with
I
that?
totally
Why
agree.
isn't he
Do
asking
you
her those
support
types of
reauthorizing
questions?
FISA
That's the
and
real
FISA?
thing. This is all a farce.
Senator, I believe
I'm sorry to, like, in the
702 is
morning
up
to
in
go from 0 to
2026.
100.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
believe
I
in
tried to treat this like,
2026.
okay, I'm going to be a
We
little
will
bit more
closely be
fair here.
looking at
Pam
that
Bondi,
FISA's
blah, 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 blah,
Do
variant.
you
blah. She's
agree
not
that
answering
the
questions.
the
Again, you got to
702
hit the thumbs up. We have
provides
so many people watching us and you're not
important
doing,
intel
because I want
gathering
people to be able to hear
capability to
this. And you're
protect the
right,
nation?
Anthony Scott, you're not a member, but this is
Extremely important.
distractions and
So,
disastrous.
Pam, you're about to step
I-
into a
Listen,
job
listen
that's
to
one of
what
the
a
most important
clown
jobs
Lindsey
in
Graham
any
is being here.
democracy.
Just listen, please.
Let's go back to pardons. If I'm a lawyer for somebody in
Finally,
jail,
pardons. This is good.
would you promise to listen to the application and read it before you made a decision?
Oh my God.
Yes.
Okay, no matter who you are. Good. That's the way it works. People want to bargain with you up here. Will you do this? Will you do that? All I ask you to do is call it as you see it, hire good, competent people, and give the president the best legal advice you can. Run the Department of Justice in a manner that other people would want to join it one day. Growing up, I had a fondness for the FBI. Watched
The
the show, I
fact
think
that
it's every
Lindsey
Sunday.
Graham is
Wanted to be an
taking
FBI
pardons
agent.
of these
Right
people
now, the
who
FBI
are
needs,
really had treasonous
needs an
actions that
image
he's
of
taking as seriously and treating it as
So
serious
you have a
is
real
really
task
very
ahead
telling
in
about
2
the state of
areas.
the Republican
To
Party
restore
right now, about
trust,
the
because
MAGA
many
folks.
Americans have lost
Because
trust in
they
the
should
Department
say
of Justice.
this is unexcusable
And to
behavior.
make
No
sure
one
that
should be
this country
pardoned.
is
Whatever
safe
the law
from drug
prescribes
cartels
for them to be
killing
treated,
3,000
that's how they
Americans
should be
every
treated.
2 weeks for
That's how
money,
this conversation should be.
to go
Are
after
you going to
these
stand up to
people
the president
and
and
to
say what
protect our
happened on
homeland
January
that's under
6th was
siege?
wrong? These
I
people are
think you're
not
the
patriots.
perfect pick
This was not a walk in the
at one of
park.
the most
And are you going
dangerous
to
times in
fight back
American history.
if he
And I look
asks
forward to
you
supporting
to
you.
pardon people?
Thank you,
That
Senator.
should be the thrust of the question.
Senator Whitehouse. Thank you, Chairman.
Here goes
Welcome
Senator
aboard.
Sheldon
Thank
Whitehouse
you,
now. Let's
Senator.
listen.
And thank you for meeting with me. I greatly appreciate that.
It was a pleasure. Ms. Bondi, you were a courtroom prosecutor for a great many years. As a courtroom prosecutor, did you ever have an enemies list?
No, Senator.
And you went on to be Florida's Attorney General. As Florida's Attorney General, did you ever have an enemies list?
No, Senator.
As Florida's Attorney General, you were responsible for hiring into the Florida Department of Attorney General, correct?
Senator, the Attorney General's office in Florida is the third largest in the state, approximately 1,400 employees and approximately 400 lawyers. Only California and Texas are our bigger offices.
And you were
So,
responsible
yes.
for hiring into that office while you were Attorney General?
Yes,
Would you
Senator.
have hired someone into the Florida Attorney General's office who you knew had an enemies list?
Senator, to cut to the chase, you're clearly talking about Kash Patel. I don't believe he has an enemies list. He made a quote on TV, which I have not heard. I saw your sign, or Senator Durbin's sign about Kash. But I know that Kash Patel has had 60 jury trials as a public defender, as a prosecutor. He has great experience in the Intel Department, Department of Defense. I have known Kash, and I believe that Kash is the right person at this time for this job. You'll have the ability to question Mr. Patel.
And I'm
when-
questioning you
when
right
you
now
do.
about whether you will enforce an enemies list that he announced publicly on television.
Oh, Senator, I'm sorry. There will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
Thank you. The FBI's, what is the FBI's role in national security and counterterrorism, and how important is that role?
You know, Senator, I believe now more than ever, counterterrorism is so important and vital in our country. We are facing such incredible threats here and abroad. If I'm sure many of you saw
What about the here part?
Former FBI Director Wray's interview on 60 Minutes. He talked about the threats that, frankly, again, I don't have my security clearance,
Yeah,
but the
but
threats
given that-
facing us, Senator, from China right
Threats
now that are
facing us from
so
China. What about the
great.
threats
They're the
facing us
sleeper
inside
cells
of the
within our
United
country.
States? Talk about
Given that
that, please.
importance,
I bet
is
you
it
won't.
responsible
Why?
to
Because a
call
lot of them are
for
MAGA
shutting
folks.
down the FBI's
A
counterterrorism
lot of
and
them are
national
Donald Trump
security work?
supporters.
And will you,
Most of these people, when they
as
catch
Attorney
them, when
General,
they're accused of these
impede
terrorist
or
acts
shut
in the
down the
United States,
FBI's
who do they turn
counterterrorism
out to
and
be?
national security
Donald
work?
Trump supporters,
Senator,
members of the
Senator, I
MAGA
believe that
movement.
national
But no one wants to
security is
talk about
vital
that.
right now
Have we
for
heard
our country
anything?
on so
Didn't
many
turn out
fronts.
to
I
be
could
a
continue
terrorist,
to
but
discuss
anything?
many
Have they
others.
said anything about the
And
guy
the
in Las
FBI
Vegas
plays a
that blew
vital
up the
role
truck
in
at the Trump? No,
counterterrorism
because he was a Donald
throughout
Trump
our
supporter.
world.
Haven't said anything.
I
These
will
people
look
are
at
ridiculous and
BJCC.
outrageous.
I have no intention of shutting anything down right now, Senator. I am not in that office yet, and if confirmed, I will look at each individual agency and how it should be managed, but counterterrorism right now in our world is vital.
Winston Sayer,
You
you're
have,
right. John, that
said
doesn't
that,
affect white people, so
the
they're not
Department
going to
of
talk
Justice
about it. You're right,
prosecutors
Winston.
will be
Absolutely.
prosecuted in the Trump administration.
Eva Forty, she
What
can't answer questions. She
Department of
can't, and she
Justice
won't. She's not going to
prosecutors
do it. This is a
will be
waste of
prosecuted
time.
and why?
Tell me
I
where you're
said that
streaming
on
from or
TV.
something
I
that
said
is
prosecutors will
constructive
be
and what you would
prosecuted
like.
to
Tell me
finish
what
the
you would
quote,
like to
if
hear
bad.
them ask and what do you want to
Investigators
hear
will be
from her.
investigated. You know, we all take an oath, Senator, to uphold the law. None of us are above the law. Let me give you a really good example of a bad lawyer within the Justice
None of
Department.
us are above
a
the
guy
law.
named
What about
Klein
Donald
Smith,
Trump?
who altered a
34
FISA
criminal
warrant,
counts,
one of the
not gonna
most
go to
important
jail.
things we can do in this
Nothing
country.
happened. They dropped the
So will
cases,
everyone
dropped the
be held
charges
to
on
an
some of it. Why?
equal
What do you mean no one's above the law?
equal, fair system of justice if I am the next Attorney General?
Let's talk about that as it
Absolutely.
relates to your dear
and
leader,
no
Pam
one
Bondi.
is above the law.
Under what circumstances will you prosecute journalists for what they write?
I believe in the freedom of speech. Only if anyone commits a crime. It's pretty
Freedom of the press,
basic,
lady.
Senator, with
Freedom of the
anything,
press,
with,
not
with
just freedom
any
of speech.
victim. And this goes
This
back
is their
to my
whole thing,
entire
freedom of
career
speech. That has
for
nothing
18
to do
years
with
as a
anything.
prosecutor and then 8
Freedom of
years
the
as
press
Florida's
is what we
Attorney
need to talk
General.
about. That's what he asked her about.
You find the facts of the case, you apply the law in good faith, and you treat everyone fairly.
And it would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name, correct?
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016.
They targeted
his
Donald
campaign.
Trump and they went
have
after him.
launched
And that
countless
has all been
investigations
proven
against him.
false. It's a
That
lie.
will not be the
She's
case
lying.
if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice
Oh
will
my
be
God.
administered
They're so-
even-handedly
The MAGA folks are
throughout
the
this
biggest
country.
snowflakes.
Senator,
Everybody's
we've got
out
to bring
get
this
them.
country back together.
Everyone is out to
We've
get
got
them.
to move
Even the
forward,
folks
or
who
we're
are
gonna
appointed
lose
by
our
Donald
country.
Trump are out to
Yeah, I
get
think
them.
the concern
Even
is that
Republican appointees, even Republicans, they're out to get it.
weaponization
If
of the
Republicans
Justice
act
Department
with any conscience
well
or any
occur under your
follow the rule
tenure.
of law,
And
then
we
they're
wanna make sure
rhinos
that
or they're
that's
never
not the
Trumpers.
case,
It's
that you
always
remain
an excuse.
independent,
This is a
that
cult.
you remain able to
And we're not going to
willing
treat it
tell
as
the
it's
president
as
no
if this
when
is
that's
normal
necessary
on
for-
this channel.
to
I'm
protect the
sorry, I'm not
Constitution
going to
and the
do it.
integrity of the
I
department. So
respect
that's where
you
I'm
guys. I respect
asking,
myself and I respect the
these,
American citizen in
questions.
America more than to
Um,
do that. And I hope you guys are okay. I know
talked
you
in
think
the
that I'm
meeting
probably going off.
about the
I
contacts
I can't
policy
do it anymore.
that
It's
has
outrageous
prevailed
and
really since
ridiculous.
Senator
This
Frank
should be a democracy, a republic,
in that chair
and it is not.
demanded of the
It's an
Clinton
oligarchy now.
Justice Department
We are
through all
going
the
into
administrations since then,
something that is
except
very
for a
dangerous
brief
territory
period
for
under Attorney
America. And
General
by the way,
Gonzalez, which he
Robin
corrected,
Dopp, thank you for becoming a
which did
member.
not
I
end well
appreciate it.
for
Tell
him.
POTUS to use his
There
powers
has been a
to
contacts
delay
policy that limits
Monday.
contacts
Thank you,
between the
Robin. I
White
appreciate
House
that.
and the Department of Justice
What do
to
you
a
What do
very
you guys
few
think? Let me
senior
know. I want to
officials on
know.
each side. In your role as Attorney General, if you are confirmed, will you maintain, defend, and enforce
More volume, Andy,
that
please.
longstanding contacts policy?
Senator, yes, I will meet with White House counsel, and I will meet with the appropriate officials and follow the contacts policy.
My time has expired. Thank you, Ms. Bondi.
Senator Cornyn.
Ms. Bondi, your testimony is music to my ears.
Thank you.
One of the things that I have been most concerned about over certainly the last 4 years and extending back during President Trump's administration is the weaponization and politicalization of the Department of Justice, which together with the FBI is one of the most important institutions in this country. If people don't trust that their elected officials will faithfully enforce the law or administer equal justice under the law, they've lost faith in America. And that disturbs me greatly, and I know it does you too, based on what you said. So I'm delighted to hear you say what you have said, but I want to talk about some specific topics. Time is short. First, the border. I believe President Biden and Vice President Harris had presided over one of the biggest humanitarian and public safety disasters in American history. Senator Cruz and I represent a state with 1,200 miles of common border with America. But as you pointed out with fentanyl, what happens at the border doesn't stay at the border. Fentanyl poisoning is the most common cause of death of young people between the age of 18 and 45. We know where it comes from. Yes. The precursors come from China. They go to the cartels, they mix them up, make them look like innocuous pills, and young people take them and die. It's just that simple and that tragic. So there's just so much that we could talk about with regard to the border, but you know, I know people voted for President Trump in large part because of his promise to restore security at the border. Will you do everything within your power as Attorney General to enforce the laws on the books, including the President's executive orders, which I anticipate he will be signing on January the 20th when he is sworn in, and help do everything you can and the Department of Justice can is to restore security to our southern border?
Yes, Senator, absolutely.
Okay, here we go with the
example,
southern
of
border
course, you
stuff.
come here
Oh
to
my
the
gosh,
United
this is
States.
going to be about how bad the Biden and the libs are, not like what you would do and how would you incorporate these people into society to help our economy. What is the best way to do it? How would you advise the president? This is going to be about how bad this is.
Enormous backlog, or you will simply be paroled. And I know parole has a special connotation in the criminal law, but in this context, as you know, it's designed to be administered on a case-by-case basis. Yet President Biden and Vice President Harris had granted parole, that is, released people into the United States on a categorical basis, or anybody who shows up, or because they don't have the detention facilities.
Let's see. Keep
keep
bringing
them.
us the truth.
So do you believe Laken Riley would be alive
Here
today
we go, Laken Riley.
if President Biden and Vice President Harris
I
had
told you
enforced
this is
the
going to be
law
about
and
the
secured
Democrats.
border?
There you go. This is what it's about.
Senator, he should not have been in our country, and then Laken Riley would have been alive. And I don't think it's just Laken Riley. There are so many victims throughout our country. Not only that, we're all familiar with the violent gangs who are coming into our country, walking into our country freely through the open border. The cartels,
So here's the thing.
the
No one
gangs,
talks about, look, this is
Venezuela's
all an issue
let
with,
people out of their prisons.
I'll let you guys hear this and then I'll get back to you.
Security
Listen.
clearance yet to see what's happening, but I know, we all know, there are criminals throughout our country, and it is my commitment to you on both sides of the aisle that I will do everything in my power with the agencies that fall under me if I am confirmed to make America safe again. We have to do that,
Hey, this is a
Senator.
setup question, something
many
that
of us
occurs.
foresee
And so here's the
classified
thing. Yeah, there's an issue, but
on the
most
committee
of the
or this
crime
morning
that is
are doing
committed
this
in this
as
country
a
and the
senator.
violent
So
crime
you're not
is
gonna feel any
committed
better
by native-born
about the
Americans.
blinking
There are
lights, the
exceptions,
danger
people
that,
who come into the country
that,
illegally, migrants.
Director
Of
Ray
course,
is talking
there are
about.
going to be
In
instances
my
where they commit
closing
crimes.
moments
And
here,
it's
I wanna
sad what happened to
revisit
Laken Riley.
an issue
But
that is
those
of
are
particular
exceptions
importance.
rather than the rules as it
60%
relates to immigrants in this
President
country.
Staley
And
Green,
no one is saying
the
that. And
intelligence
that's what she
brief
should
that
be
the
saying
Director
now.
of National
This is
Intelligence
awful.
and the
This should
CIA
not
director
happen. I would
delivered
make
to the
sure that
President
as the Attorney
comes
General
from
that it didn't
Section
happen. But let me
702
be
of the
clear
Foreign
about
Intelligence
immigrants
Surveillance
and
Act.
what they do for the country.
I call
Yes, we
this
need to
the
fix
most
the border,
important law
but they
enforcement
can
have
be a
never heard of.
positive to the
I
country
know you
rather
have,
than
and you're
a
familiar
negative.
with
And
it,
if
but I
we
want to
treat
ask you
them
a
in
few
that
more, a few
manner and
questions
figure
about
out a
that.
way to bring them here illegally
It's
and
been
to
called the
fix the
crown
system,
jewel
we would not have
of
to deal with a
U.S.
lot of these
intelligence.
problems. We need to be
And of
level-headed
course, it
and
cannot be
clear about these
legally
things
used to spy
and
on
address those
American
issues and
citizens.
also address
And if it
the
is, it ought to be
terror that has
prosecuted to the
grown
fullest extent of
inside
the
of our
law. I
country.
know you would agree
We
with
can
that.
fix all of these things without being so partisan
But
and
there have been
divisive. And
some,
that's what I
as
will
you know,
do
and
with
as you
an
pointed out to
independent
Senator
justice
Graham,
or
we have
as
a
an
temporary
independent
extension of the
attorney general.
existing
She's not
authorization
going to
for
say
the use
anything
of the
like that.
intelligence
Trump, Trump,
community
Trump,
to
Trump, Trump,
target
whatever he
foreign
wants. Dim's bad.
threats to
And
our
again,
national
another
security
device at 4
that
years.
expires
That's
in
what the MAGA folks are going to
2026.
bring us.
And I'd like you just to confirm here on the record that you will enforce that law and you can support the law as it is written.
Senator, I haven't read the entire 702 in front of you, but I will commit to reading that and doing everything I can to keep America safe again.
Of course you will. So Director Ratliff, who's going to be, I'm going to go to his hearing on for CIA director. Of course, he was confirmed as Director of National Intelligence. Some have argued that in order to query or look at lawfully collected FISA 702 product, that you need to get a warrant requirement in order to show probable cause that a crime, including espionage perhaps, has been committed. But Director Ratliff has written that a warrant requirement may not achieve its intended objectives and could hinder national security efforts. Do you share Director Ratcliffe's concerns?
I would read his memo, and I will speak to you after I read his memo, Senator.
Well, we need to have I hope you and I can continue this conversation after this, because I think there's a lot of misinformation with regard to how Section 702 works. I'm happen to be one of the members of the Senate Intelligence Committee. We read that product on a regular basis, and it is not used to spy on American people. I think what's fundamentally missing is a lack of trust in the intelligence community, including the FBI, which I'm hoping you and Mr. Patel can restore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a good meeting this week. Thank you for that. And I appreciated your priorities on human trafficking that you mentioned today, that work, as well as fentanyl and some of your other prosecution experience.
Let's
We
listen
had
to
some
Senator Amy
similar
Klobuchar. She can be
backgrounds in
tough.
doing that.
They actually,
And
Pam Bondi,
I wanna
I
talk
will
about
give it to her that she did
12
meet with
US
Democrats.
attorney's office in
Pete
Minnesota,
said not so much.
one of the
So let's
premier
listen to Senator,
offices in the country.
Senator Amy
It's
Klobuchar and see what she has to ask.
instrumental in
Let's see.
combating, violent crime, dismantling street gangs, taking fentanyl off our streets, enforcing civil rights laws after George Floyd's murder, ensuring victims of fraud get justice. Do you agree that it should be a priority to support U.S. attorneys, frontline prosecutors, and case agents who work hard every single day on our streets?
Senator, I think that is one of the most important things in our country right now. And there are so many good men and women within the Justice Department throughout our country, as well as all the law enforcement agencies. Yes, they work very hard and they will be supported.
I'm concerned about some of the proposals that could put cuts in the COPS program, burn JAG programs. I know you're familiar with those. Senator Murkowski and I lead the COPS reauthorization bill. Just will you commit to continue to support those programs?
Senator, I will read everything about those programs because that is a top priority of mine, and I would love to meet with you on that and Senator Murkowski to support law enforcement and those programs.
Thank you. Independence from political interference is vital to the legitimacy and success of the Department of Justice. I was honestly troubled by some of the answers to Senator Durbin's questions. We will continue that discussion, I'm sure, on the committee about the election. But I want to focus on the investigation, charging decisions. As a prosecutor, I'm sure you had this experience. I would get calls from people, hey, that's just a kid, give him a break. And I remember one answer I gave was, he's 40 years old, he's not a kid. But that kind of interference is attempted all the time. And one of my concerns here, whether it's a call from a friend, a corporate lobbyist, a White House, it has been very clear that the attorney generals of both parties have established clear policies to ensure the White House doesn't tamper with criminal investigations and prosecutions. At Attorney General Mike McCasey's hearing, he made clear that any attempt by the White House, and these are the words, to interfere with a case is not to be countenanced. Any call to a line assistant or to a United States attorney from a political person relating to a case is to be cut and curtailed. Do you agree with this statement?
Senator, yes, I believe that the Justice Department must be independent and must act independently. The number one job is to enforce the law fairly and even-handedly, and that's what will be done if I am confirmed as the Attorney General.
So you will provide an assurance to every member of this committee that the Justice Department will only follow the facts and the law, and the White House will play no role in cases investigated or brought?
Senator, it will be my job, if confirmed as Attorney General, to make those decisions. Politics will not play a part. I've demonstrated that my entire career as a prosecutor, as Attorney General, and I
Do
will
you guys
continue
believe
to
that
do
politics
that
will not
if
play
you
a part
confirm
that
me
she's
as
saying?
the
Come on.
87th Attorney General of the United States of America.
In an earlier question, with some of my colleagues talked about China and the risk, yet you have a nominee from this incoming administration, Kash Patel, the pick to head the FBI.
Well, this is good. Kash
Serious
Patel,
concern
listen,
about
everybody,
him,
closely.
Has referred to the FBI's Intel Division, which is responsible for protecting us from foreign adversaries like China, as, quote, the biggest problem the FBI has had, and he said that he wants to, quote, break that component out of the FBI. Do you agree?
I have not seen those comments from Mr. Patel. I would review them, but we have to do everything we can to protect our country. Again, Mr. Patel would fall under me and the Department of Justice, and I will ensure that all laws are followed, and so will he.
Okay. There are many decisions made by the FBI director, having seen a number of them do their work, that can be made. While I agree you would be the boss of Kash Patel, I'm not sure that you would be able to intervene with every decision or position that he had or know what he's doing. So let's continue. Do you agree it is a duty of the Justice Department to defend the laws Congress passes? And will you commit to do even when the president may disagree with an act campaigned against its passage or called for its repeal? President Reagan's AG, William French Smith, said the department policy was the department has the duty to defend an act of Congress whenever a reasonable argument can be made in its support. So I'm specifically referring to the 2022 law that I long led that we passed to empower Medicare to negotiate drug prices, major savings for seniors. Will you commit to defend the law against the lawsuits from Big Pharma?
Senator, I was involved in big pharma cases when I was Attorney General of the state of Florida, and I will commit to protect the laws of the United States of America.
Okay, thank you. That would also, same question, with the Supreme Court is going to be hearing a challenge to the Affordable Care Act's coverage of preventative services. And despite the fact that you twice joined suits to have the entire Affordable Care Act invalidated, will you commit to defending this law?
Yeah, I believe this is very different. It's a very isolated, it's different. It's not the entire Affordable Care Act, but I will, it's pending litigation, of course, within the department.
Since the 1990s, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act has protected patients, providers, and facilities that provide reproductive health services. Will you commit to continuing to enforce the FACE Act to address violence and threats against those providing reproductive health care services?
Senator, the FACE Act not only protects abortion clinics, but it also protects pregnancy centers and people going for counseling. The law should be applied even-handedly. Yes, Senator.
So you'll uphold the enforcement of that law?
I'll uphold the enforcement of the law, Senator.
Okay, and I will ask my antitrust questions in the next round. We had a good discussion about that, and I do appreciate the nominee that has been put in place for the antitrust division, and there's incredibly important work
This has been
that
very
has
sober
to be
and
done.
very
in
direct
that division.
questioning
So-
from Senator Amy Klobuchar. Most people would expect her to be tougher and harder. Her answers sound forced and staged, and how robotic she sounds. That's what Frag Dude 44 says. So Senator Amy Klobuchar just kind of went there, didn't think she was that tough. What do you guys think of Senator Amy Klobuchar and what she did here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Bondi, for being here today. I too share the assessment that Gail Slater is great. Had a great meeting with her yesterday. Just thrilled that you're here and that you're willing to serve. I'd like to talk to you as a longtime lawyer and one who has handled a variety of criminal matters about the Fourth Amendment. What can you tell us about the Fourth Amendment's warrant requirement and why it's so important?
Well, the warrant requirement is so important, which I've dealt with that since I was in my 20s as a state prosecutor. A warrant is so important because it protects citizens' rights, and that's why it's so important.
And it does that specifically because under the Fourth Amendment, you're required to go to a judge, and you're required to show a judge evidence providing probable cause.
Here we go.
And based on that probable cause, you can describe with particularity
invading the president's home. That's what they're going to say. Watch.
And on that basis, the judge may issue or not issue the warrant, but without it, you can't get it. Now, this is time-consuming, no doubt, right?
Oh, I've done many of them, yes. It's very time-consuming.
Illegal
And
searches.
there's probably not a law enforcement officer anywhere in the world who wouldn't acknowledge that they could save time if they didn't have to go about it. And yet we require it. Why is that so important that we do it?
Well, it's so important for the reasons you just laid out. When I said I've done many of them, I've approved them and not approved them as a state prosecutor, because law enforcement, there are checks and balances, and law enforcement must bring these warrants to prosecutors to see if there is sufficient evidence. Then after that's done, they have to take them to a judge to have a judge sign them. So there have to be sufficient checks and balances throughout our system.
So even after you as Attorney General, as the chief law enforcement officer and prosecutorial authority in the state of Florida approved it within your office, you still had to go to the judge. And if it was late at night, early in the morning, didn't matter when, you had to find a judge.
All hours of the night. That was more when I was a state prosecutor. As Attorney General, the office of the statewide prosecutor, Nick Cox, would have done that many, many times at all hours throughout the night and woken up many, many judges throughout the state of Florida.
Is there an exception to the warrant requirement that exists anytime it would be inconvenient for prosecutors or anytime national security might be involved?
Just saying. English was my minor.
I'm not certain about national security, but absolutely no for a state prosecutor.
Right. Yeah, there's
no exception.
There's no catch-all exception that just
Maybe
says
there's
this
woke
is
on the
important where
brain.
it would be inconvenient for the prosecutor, and with good reason.
Right.
We've learned through sad experience over many hundreds of years, not only in our own country, but also in that of our mother country, what happens when you don't have this in the loop. So you've been asked today a little bit about Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, also known as FISA.
Here we go. FISA,
Repeatedly
spying on
assured
Trump,
members of this
blah,
committee,
blah,
including
blah.
myself,
Oh my gosh.
that,
they're so
don't
transparent.
worry. Content
this
of
is like
phone calls
them.
or electronic communication.
For them, this is going to be the
involving
same
American
thing
citizens,
over and
sometimes
over and over
resulting in
again.
the
Donald Trump was
quote-unquote
spied on. We
incidental
went through
collection
this. He was not.
of
It was
American
shown that he was
citizens'
not.
private
It was an
conversation.
illegal search of
Don't
Mar-a-Lago.
worry,
It
their
was
Fourth Amendment
not.
rights
Oh
are
my
just fine.
gosh.
And yet, when they incidentally
We are
collect
going to
communications of
repeal and
American
replace.
citizens
Never
because
happened.
they're,
Broken records.
perhaps
Keep going.
unwittingly talking to somebody who might be an agent of a foreign power and themselves under 702 surveillance, they get onto this big database. And at times, there are those in the government, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who have gotten into that database and done so, of course, without a warrant because there currently is no warrant requirement. This has the effect of what we call a de facto backdoor warrantless search. Would you agree with me that that is potentially concerning anytime an American citizen's private conversations are intercepted, stored, whether as an incidental collection or otherwise? They ought not be searched without some kind of probable cause showing. I assume you'd agree with me on that.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's important. Sometimes people will defend that by saying national security is involved, as if that's the beginning and the end of the inquiry. That has never been the case, And I hope and pray it never will be the case, because that's not what the Fourth Amendment says, not what it does, not what it ever can be. So it's my sincere hope that the next time FISA 702 comes up for reauthorization, Congress finally do what it has been avoiding for a long time, which is to ensure that this doesn't happen. We've heard again and again from people who, if you're confirmed to this position, will soon be your predecessors, prior occupants of the position to which you've been nominated and to which Mr. Patel has been nominated. Don't worry, we have good people. Don't worry, we have good systems in place. Don't worry, it's as good as a warrant requirement, the internal approval procedure that we have within our system. And yet we found out time and time again that this has happened by some accounts hundreds of thousands of times. These things have been accessed where searches for an American citizen's private communications that have been intercepted and stored through incidental collection have been searched without those safeguards being met, including instances where people just wanted to check on, to cite one example, whether his father was cheating on his mother, or in other instances, doing background checks on someone looking to lease an apartment that he owned and was looking to rent out. This is unacceptable, and we've got to fix it. Speaking of unacceptable, we have seen over the last few years the weaponization of government, specifically within the Department of Justice.
Here we go.
Against
Weaponization
law-abiding
of the Justice
Americans.
Department.
Law-abiding Americans.
Weaponization. Law-abiding Americans.
Something along the lines of, them exercising their constitutional rights, ranging from Catholics attempting to practice their faith.
Oh my gosh.
To
Catholics.
parents showing up to school board meetings.
Christians are the problem.
To
Christians are being
people
persecuted in the
showing
United
up
States, right? Not the folks who are there trying to do entire bans on Muslims and blame all of this terrorism on, when most of the time, again, the biggest terror threat in the country, homegrown terror, not Muslim or overseas folks. But let's listen.
The weaponization. Going after parents at a school board meeting has got to stop. For practicing your religion, sending informants into Catholic churches must stop.
What about branding parents as domestic terrorists or trying to incarcerate one's political opponent as a sitting president of the United States?
Will stop, must stop.
Oh my God.
Is exactly sort of answer I was
Guys.
hoping and expecting to receive from you, and I look forward
This
to
is
doing everything I
all-
can to help get you confirmed. I've been pleased
Like,
with your
this is
answers
all
thus
bullshit.
far.
None of this stuff
I've
is happening.
enjoyed, knowing you.
None of
I've
this
been
is
a friend
happening.
For many years, and look
The,
forward to
the Justice Department is weaponized. Have you guys ever met Merrick Garland? Does Donald Trump, do these folks not understand that the reason that Donald Trump is not in prison right now is in large part because of Merrick Garland did not have a strong enough Justice Department? If they were really weaponizing the Justice Department in this country, Donald Trump would probably be in jail right now. What the hell is wrong with these people? This hearing is stupid. You're right, Beth Collier. Maureen, this is painful. But again, is this today just for this? Okay, will you guys just riddle me this? Just allow this. It's a clown show. Let's look at it. And then many of these things we won't have to cover. Perhaps we won't have to really talk about Marco Rubio. He's even though Marco Rubio has been a shill for Donald Trump, ran against him, Donald Trump insulted him, and now he's like Donald Trump's biggest whatever, and now he's being nominated. But he's the most normal of these folks. Perhaps we won't have to cover that as much. I just want you to see the farce of this. Will you just allow this, or do you think, are you not able to keep your breakfast down because of this? I got to get another coffee. Listen to this. I'm going to grab another coffee. I'll be right back, okay?
My oath would be to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. The people of America would be my client. And it is also my job to advise the president. My client are the people of America.
A simple question of constitutional interpretation. Is President-elect Trump eligible to run for another term as president in 2028?
No, Senator, not unless they change the Constitution.
Thank you. One of the concerns I've raised with you is safeguarding the Department of Justice's independence in the face of some promises on the campaign trail by then candidate Trump that he would use the department to target his political adversaries, or that he might interfere with prosecution. What would you do if your career DOJ prosecutors came to you with a case to prosecute, grounded in the facts and law, but the White House directs you to drop the case?
Senator, if I thought that would happen, I would not be sitting here today. That will not happen, will not happen.
This is a more
Every
direct
case will
answer
be
than any
prosecuted
of them.
based on the facts and the law that is applied in good faith, period. Politics have got to be taken out of the system.
I
This
agree with
department
you.
has been weaponized for years and years and years,
But let
and it
me,
has
if
to
I might,
stop.
thank you. Let me, if I might,
She says
Madam Attorney
has
General,
been
refer you
weaponized
back
for years and
to
years.
Senator
Is she
Rubio
talking about Bill
comments.
Barr? And if she is, she should say that, because that's who really weaponized the Justice Department, was Bill Barr, when he came out with his fraudulent assessment of the Russia report, where he framed the Russia report to get Republicans and MAGA folks to believe that there was nothing to it. When you actually read the report, there was a lot to it, and should have been disqualifying.
Just answer the
That
question.
was Bill Barr, who was the Attorney
I know
General.
you
So if
may
she
not
means
expect it.
weaponization
I know you
of
wouldn't
the Justice
accept
Department,
this
perhaps she means
nomination
Bill
if you
Barr,
thought it
certainly
possible.
not Merrick Garland.
But let's imagine that once again, President-elect Trump issues a directive or order to you or to the FBI director that is outside the boundaries of ethics or law. What will you do?
Senator, I will never speak on a hypothetical, especially one saying that the president would do something illegal. What I can tell you is my duty, if confirmed as the Attorney General, will be to the Constitution and the United States of America. And the most important oath, part of that oath that I will take, are the last four words, "So help me God."
Given the importance of that oath, I hope you can understand the importance of repeated questions from some of us about the importance of having independence in the Department of Justice. It has a long tradition of independent special
This is
prosecutors.
a very
especially
important
to
question,
handle
everyone.
high-profile or often political cases. If you got credible evidence of a criminal violation by a White House official, including even the president, would you bring in a special prosecutor?
Senator, that's a hypothetical. I can tell you what I do know is special prosecutors have been abused in the past on both sides. We have seen that for many, many years. They have cost the taxpayers countless dollars, countless. And I will look at each situation on a case-by-case basis and consult the appropriate career ethics officials within the department to make that decision.
Attorney General, do you think special counsels need to be confirmed by the Senate?
I will follow the law and I will consult with the appropriate ethics officials regarding the law. Right now, they do not need to be Senate confirmed, of course.
But you did sign an 11th Circuit brief arguing that they should be.
I will follow the law, Senator. That's why I said that.
Understood, but I was just getting to the clarity about the difference between a
Absolutely.
position you've advocated and what the current law is. Thank you for that. Look, bluntly, to me, refusing to answer a hypothetical when there is clear and concrete previous history raises some concerns for me. I think Chris Wray has done an outstanding job as FBI director at avoiding political pressure. And although he was chosen by President Trump, he's being driven out so that he can be replaced. My perception, I've not yet met with Mr. Patel, by a loyalist who has publicly said he will do what the president asks him. Given that Attorney General Barr was asked to go find evidence of election interference and improprieties, went and looked for the evidence and said, I can't find any, and was then dismissed, I'm just going to ask you one last time. Can you clarify for me that in following ethics and the law, you'd be willing to resign if ordered to do something improper?
Whoa, watch.
Senator, I wouldn't work at a law firm. I wouldn't be a prosecutor. I wouldn't be Attorney General. If anyone asked me to do something improper and I felt I had to carry that out, of course I would not do that. That's one of the main things you learn when you're a young prosecutor is to do the right thing. And I believe that has continued with me throughout my very long career.
As we discussed, protecting American invention and innovation, American intellectual property, is a real concern of mine and of several others on this committee. I look forward to talking with you about that pressing concern. But the most important question I had for you today is whether you will be willing and able to stand up to politicization and interference in the Department of Justice. And I look forward to further clarification from you about the specifics of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator.
Senator Cruz would be next, but he's not here, so I call on Senator Kennedy.
Wait, where is Ted Cruz? Is he in Cancun?
Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations.
I know that was a low blow. Sorry. Oh gosh, here we go. From the
Can we
home
agree
state, my home state of Louisiana,
that legitimacy
Senator Kennedy.
is important to America's criminal justice system?
Yes, Senator.
Can we agree that legitimacy is important to the Department of Justice, which in part administers our criminal justice system?
Yes, Senator.
And if Americans come to believe that our criminal justice system or our Department of Justice is acting illegitimately, that makes Americans less likely to accept the results of that system, does it not?
Yes, Senator.
And that makes Americans less likely to follow the substantive laws that we pass that are administered by the Department of
Maria
Justice.
Maniscalco. I
Isn't that true?
know.
Yes, Senator.
And if that happens, we have chaos, don't we?
Sometimes.
Chaos.
And the social contract is breached, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you remember a person by the name of Michael Avenatti?
Oh boy, here we go all the way
Yes.
back. Now she remembers Michael Avenatti, but she hasn't heard the phone call.
Several years ago, he was a media star here in Washington.
An attorney, correct?
Yes. He was a media star. And many members of our media loved him because he persistently bashed Donald Trump. And he was on TV every day. He was on CNN more than Wolf Blitzer. Do you know where Mr. Avenatti is today?
I believe he's sitting in prison, Senator.
He's in jail because he was a crook. And the Department of Justice helped put him there, didn't it?
Yes, Senator.
Do you remember a gentleman by the name of Sam Bankman-Fried?
Yes, Senator.
Boy genius.
Now,
So
look, this is
smart
a
and
Biden's
so
Justice
powerful.
Department here. Is he touting Biden's independence of Biden's Justice Department?
Command the tides. So smart and so powerful and so rich that he would go to meetings with serious people like Bill Clinton, like Tony Blair, looking like a slob, looking like a fourth runner-up to a John Belushi lookalike contest. And he thought it was cute. Where's Mr. Bankman-Fried today?
I believe he is in prison, and I believe that's from the Netflix series I saw as well.
Because he's a crook. And who helped put him there?
The Department of Justice, Senator.
Can we agree that there's some really, really good men and women at the Department of Justice?
Many, many great men and women in the Justice Department, as well, Senator, as all the law enforcement agencies that fall within the Department of Justice. They're out there risking their lives, especially the law enforcement officers, every single day.
Can we agree, though, that there have been and may be
What
today
is the point of this?
some bad people at the Department?
Jeez.
Yes, Senator.
We don't know for sure because for the last 4 years, the curtains there have been tightly drawn. But I think a minority of people there have delegitimized America's criminal justice system. The most destabilizing act that I saw in the past 4 years, maybe in the history of the department, is when Attorney General Garland decided on the basis of dubious facts and untested legal theories to criminally prosecute a former president of the United States. And not only that, this is the special part. He decided to do it after the former president of the United States had announced that he was going to run against Attorney General Garland's boss, didn't he?
Senator, are you referring to going after a political opponent?
She is trying to pull him along. Come on, this is painful.
Now,
Is there like a
this
question,
is one
or
person's opinion.
is this just about
That
showboating?
kind of stupid takes a plan. And I say that because, number one, this is America. That had never happened before in America. That's the sort of thing that happens in a country whose Powerball jackpot is 287 chickens and a goat. It doesn't happen here. And I call it stupid because it broke the seal. It broke the seal. It normalized it. There are a lot of ambitious prosecutors in America, Democrat and Republican. And I'll bet you right now there's some prosecutor in a particular state thinking about, well, maybe I ought to file criminal charges against President Biden's inner circle for conspiring to conceal his mental decline. And that's the road we're headed down. And you've got to fix it.
What about the possible alleged mental
gotta fix it.
decline
And-
reported
and
of
here's
Donald
what- in my
Trump? And what
judgment,
about
what I
you,
would ask you
dude?
to do.
This is painful.
Find out who the bad guys are and the bad women and get rid of them. Find out who the good people are and lift them up. But do it on the basis of facts and evidence and fairness. Because the temptation of some people is going to be, they're going to tell you, look, two wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even. Don't resist that temptation. Help us.
Hi, Rob Mack. Thank you for your support of independent media. I know you guys are listening to this, but I want to thank you guys for your support. Hit the thumbs up. He's just basically now just giving her a big smooch. And what was the point of that? Did you guys get anything out of that? Seriously. And did you get anything out of that sort of froghorn, leghorn type? That reminded me when I was a kid and the old guys at my high school when I belonged to this club, this high school club called the Interact Club, which was like a junior Rotary League club. And these old dudes, white dudes, would invite us over to me. So let me sit you down, boy, and tell you a story, boy. And I'd sit there and I'd go, first of all, boy, and sit down and tell me the story. Just give me the point of it and move on. So long story short, I'm like, no, this is a long story. And it's like an old racist story. But anyways, that's what that reminds me of. That was not productive at all. By the way, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the thumbs up. Tell me what you think of that. Yeah, and it's like foghorn leghorn. I'm sorry, I'm just being honest. All right, let's go.
You dodged that question when you were asked directly by Senator Durbin. You have to be able to say that January 6th insurrectionists who committed violence shouldn't be pardoned. You have to be able to say that a nominee for the FBI director who says he has an enemy list, and that's just the beginning of what he has said in terms of political
Senator Blumenthal,
deeply
saying exactly what I said. Listen closely to Senator
against
Blumenthal.
political opponents, that he shouldn't be the FBI director. You know, we have some history here with your predecessors, Barr, Sessions, and others, who perhaps sincerely, when they sat where you are now, said that they would say no, but they were working with a president that expected them to be his Roy Cohn, his personal attorney. Do you really think that you can avoid the disgrace that they encountered or the repercussions from the White House if you say no to the president? And so my question to you is, can you say no to the president of the United States when he asks you to do something unethical or illegal?
Senator, first, I need to clarify something that you said, that I have to sit up here and say these things. No, I don't. I sit up here and speak the truth. I'm not going to sit up here and say anything that I need to say to get confirmed by this body. I don't have to say anything. I will
But you
answer
have
the
to answer the
questions to the
questions.
best of my ability
Well,
and
let
honestly.
me ask you, an individual who says that he is going to, quote, come after, end quote, people he alleges, quote, help Joe Biden rig the presidential elections, that he has a list of people who are part of this deep state who should be prosecuted, that he's going to close down the FBI building on his first day in office. Is that a person who appropriately should be the FBI director? Aren't those comments inappropriate? Shouldn't you disavow them and ask him to recant them?
Senator, I am not familiar with all those comments. I have not discussed those comments with Mr. Patel. What I do know
Well,
is
I'm
Mr.
asking you
Patel,
for your
excuse
view.
me, what I do know is Mr. Patel was a career prosecutor. He was a career public defender defending people, and he also has great experience within the intelligence community. What I can sit here and tell you is Mr. Patel, if he works with running the FBI, if he is confirmed, and if I am confirmed, he will follow the law if I am the Attorney General of the United States of America, and I don't believe he would do anything otherwise.
Well, let me just submit that the response that I would have hoped to hear from you is that those comments are inappropriate and that you will ask him to disavow or recant them when he comes before this committee, because they are indeed chilling to fair enforcement and the rule of law. Let me ask you on another topic. When we met, I welcomed your support for the goals of the Kids Online Safety Act. And Senator Blackburn and I have spent a lot of time, devoted a lot of effort to the passage of the Kids Online Safety Act, which happened by an overwhelming vote of 91-3, 72 co-sponsors, including Vice President-elect Vance. I appreciated our discussion and your support for protecting kids online when we met last week. I'm hopeful that this area is one where we can work together. Can we count on your support in working together to protect kids online?
Senator, absolutely, and thank you for that legislation, and Senator Blackburn. I believe in this world right now, we have to find the things we have in common, and that is certainly one of them, Senator, protecting our children from online predators. You've done so much on that front, and I thank you. I attempted to do that as well when I was Attorney General, but I am committed to working with you on anything we can do to protect our children throughout this country. When I was Attorney General, we started something called From Instant Message to Instant Nightmare, and educating parents about online predators. And that also, Senator, is one of the core functions of the FBI, the cyber unit. They sit there, these agents sit there all day long and investigate child predators. We tell parents constantly, you think you're
Ms. Bondi,
talking to another
I
child,
apologize.
and you're
I'm
not.
going to interrupt you. I welcome
Sure.
your positive response. I have
Oh,
one
go ahead.
more question that I'm going to try to fit into
Sure.
this round. TikTok will be banned unless it is sold because it has become a tool for the Chinese to collect information and do surveillance and endanger our national security, can you commit that you will enforce that law promptly and effectively?
Let's listen.
And I ask this question because President Trump's pick for your Solicitor General in the Department of Justice went to the United States Supreme Court arguing that the ban should be delayed. Will you commit to enforce that law on your first day when you are, if you are confirmed?
Senator, as I discussed with you during our meeting, that is pending litigation within the Department of Justice.
Well, it's pending litigation, but will you enforce that law?
I can't discuss pending litigation, but I will talk to all the career
Well, again,
prosecutors who are handling the case. Absolutely, Senator. Discuss with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Tillis.
Ms. Bondi, thank you for being here.
Okay, she was
I told
asked
you when we
about
met. Thank you
TikTok.
for your time.
So I'm gonna,
Have a lot of friends and family and follow.
okay, I just want to make sure that I wasn't interrupting at a terrible point. Okay, so I've got to do something. I'll go away and I'll be right back. We're going to continue with the hearing. I'll come back to you on the other side. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit.
I actually, in some of these hearings, I created a bingo card to see what some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle were going to hit. I want to go back to a few of them really quickly. One was about you being a lobbyist paid for and on the payroll of Qatar. Would you mind going back and repeating what you said in case people did not hear the involvement of your law firm and precisely what you were doing for the government of Qatar?
Yes, Senator, I was very proud of that work. It was anti-human trafficking in advance of the World Cup, and human trafficking has been something that's been very important to me my entire career, especially when I was Attorney General of the
And you
state
also
of
made
Florida.
it clear that you had a number of practitioners within the firm working on it, so this narrative that you were getting $115,000 a month from Qatar is correct or not?
Not correct.
Okay, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about, well, first off, I want to go back. You should be happy that so many comments have been directed towards Kash Patel, whose confirmation I am supporting. In fact, I'm meeting with him today, because that means they're out of stuff for you. So if it comes up again, you will once again know that you've got a great reputation and a great resume, and they are just trying to find things to put your integrity into question. You have answered the question repeatedly that that you will be loyal to the Constitution and you will live up to the oath to the Constitution and to protecting the American people. And I think Mr. Patel, when he becomes here, he'll be able to get rid of the myth in the same way that you did as a lobbyist for Qatar. He'll be able to get rid of that list of the enemies, be able to deal with the enemies list, and the marketing department for your opposition is going to have to come up with new material because that stuff is getting old. Section 702. You heard Senator Lee talk about some concerns that he has with 702. I believe it's one of the most important things that you can do early into your confirmation. You will be confirmed, and hopefully with some Democrat support. That there have been dramatic reforms to 702. I've sat through an extensive presentation to try and make sure that the abuses never occur again and that you have a throat to choke if somebody abuses the protocol that's in place. I believe that we need to codify a lot of that. As a matter of fact, when I went through it, I felt like there were so many blinding flashes of the obvious. How could this not have already been a part of the approval matrix? So can you, after you're confirmed, commit that you or a designate will come back and provide for this committee an update on all of the protocols that have changed and recommended legislation for codifying so that when we do go to reauthorization, we'll have what we need to make sure that that program stays in place?
Senator, I or a designee will review all of 702 before it terms, of course, in 2026 and come back and report to you on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you. You have a great perspective with your time in the state and working with the Department of Justice. Give me an idea of things that we need to do better in terms of, and I'm talking primarily in the law enforcement role. I think many people don't understand the joint task forces, the law enforcement efforts that are going every single day in every one of our states. What an incredible job they do. So can you give me some sense of things that you would look at to say, maybe we could do it better from your perspective of having been a prosecutor in Florida?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Yeah, having been a career prosecutor, I think I have a unique perspective because I was a state prosecutor, of course, prior to becoming Attorney General. So I worked on a daily basis with local law enforcement and state and federal, not daily with federal, but I worked consistently with state, local, and federal. Then when I was Attorney General, I worked with all three as well. I feel like we have to have better coordination among all our agencies, especially given all the terrorism issues that we've discussed earlier in this hearing. We have to wrap in and communicate better with our local and state law enforcement officers throughout this country. There are so many great men and women in law enforcement, and we have to, I don't know exactly how yet, but we have to figure out a better way to work together with the federal authorities.
Thank you. And I'm going to do a second round as well, but I think I also checked the bingo card for election denier. There were some people, that seemed to suggest that you were denying the election. I think that you said that President Biden is our president.
President Biden is the President of the United States of America, and President Trump will be the 47th president.
But I think you made a point that or at least I inferred from a comment that you made, a very important point. Folks, there are election improprieties in every election. The question is a matter of scale and whether or not you can prove it. We've seen it in North Carolina and seen it in other places. It's one of the reasons why I support voter ID, because we want to make elections easy to vote and hard to cheat. But the fact of the matter is people are cheating. So if anybody on this dais suggests that there aren't irregularities in every election, then they need to spend more time at home and really studying the facts. I don't think, though, that you've said that Biden is an illegitimate president. In fact, I think you said just the opposite. He is the president of the United States, and President Trump will be the next president, right?
Yes.
Okay. Last thing before the second round, January 6th, a lot of people are going to say you're going to have a rubber stamp for letting people have pardons or recommending a pardon for people who did violence to law enforcement. I'm not going to ask you a hypothetical because I want you to be consistent in not answering them. But I have to believe, as a member, I was the last member out of the Senate on January the 6th. I walked past a lot of law enforcement officers, who were injured. I find it hard to believe that the President of the United States or you would look at facts that were used to convict the violent people on January the 6th and say it was just an intemperate moment. I don't even expect you to respond to that, but I think it's an absurd and unfair hypothetical here, and you probably haven't heard the last of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before I call on Senator Hirano, after her and Cruz's testimony, then we'll take a lunch break, and that break will be for 30 minutes. And I can't control when my senators come back, but I expect you to be back after 30 minutes, and I'll be here.
Yes, Chairman.
And then I may leave the meeting to open the Senate, so whoever's on our side is acting chairman during that period of time. Senator Hirano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of my responsibility to ensure the fitness of all nominees, I ask the following two initial questions. First, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
Ms. Bondi, I am focused on two things in my evaluation of President-elect Trump's nominees. The first is whether the nominee is qualified and experienced enough to do the job. The second is a fitness to serve, which includes putting loyalty to the Constitution over loyalty to the president. Unfortunately, in my view, many of President-elect Trump's nominees are lacking in at least one of these two requirements. Ms. Bondi, your experience as a prosecutor is the kind of thing we would expect to see in a nominee for Attorney General, but I do have questions. and concerns about potential conflicts of interest, about whether you will keep DOJ's law enforcement responsibilities independent of the president's political whims, and about whether you will let facts and evidence guide your decisions. So let's start with the importance of facts, which you say is important. Ms. Bondi, we want an attorney general who bases decisions on facts. So I want to ask you a factual question. Who won the 2020 presidential election?
Joe Biden is the President of the United States.
Ms. Bondi, you know that there is a difference between acknowledging it and, I can say that Donald Trump won the 2024 election. I may not like it, but I can say it. You cannot say who won the 2020 presidential election. Okay. It's disturbing that you can't give voice to that fact. Moving on to DOJ's independence from politics. Ms. Bondi, if you are confirmed as Attorney General, you will take an oath to the Constitution and not to any individual, including the President. To start, I'd like to know whether you agree with some of the statements President-elect Trump made during the election, during the campaign. First, are the felons convicted of breaking into the Capitol on January 6th hostages or patriots, quoting Trump, as President-elect Trump has said repeatedly? Do you agree with his characterization of the felons that I referred to?
I am not familiar with that statement, Senator.
I just familiarized you with that statement. Do you agree with that statement?
I'm not familiar with it, Senator.
No answer. He has also said illegal immigration is poisoning the blood of our nation. He said that in December 2023. Do you agree with that statement?
Senator, I am not familiar with that statement, but what I can tell you is I went to the border a few months ago. I went to Yuma, Arizona, and what I saw at that border was horrific, Senator. It was horrific.
Ms. Bondi,
I went to a rape crisis center.
That is
If I could
not my
finish,
question.
I went to a rape crisis center. Well, I'm not familiar with the statement, but I went to a
to
rape
the
crisis
next-
center. I
Let me
met
get to
with
the
Border
important-
Patrol
I have-
agents. I'm sure you've been to the
Ms.
border
Bondi,
as well, so
I
you
want to
could
get
answer
to my
that.
next question. So I believe that you responded to a question from Senator Whitehouse, and let me get your response again. You said that the White House, if I'm putting words in your mouth, correct me. You said that the White House will play no role in investigative or charging decisions in the DOJ. Is that correct?
Senator, what I said is that it is the Department of Justice's decision to determine what cases will be prosecuted.
What role will the White House have in investigative or prosecutorial decisions of the DOJ?
It is the Department of Justice's decision, Senator.
So that sounds to me that you're saying that the White House will not have any kind of role. Meanwhile, though, you have an incoming president who said, I have the absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department. And in fact, President-elect Trump considers the DOJ to be his law firm. I ask you this. If President-elect Trump asks, suggests, or hints that you as Attorney General should investigate one of his proceedings, would you do so?
Me, had you met with gotten to know me, and who refused or discussed is that it
And you
the
have a
Attorney General
President-elect who
to
I'm very
follow
happy to
the
listen to
law.
your responses under oath, Ms. Bondi. So I think it's really important whether if the president suggests, hints, asks, that you as Attorney General should investigate one of his perceived enemies?
Senator, I
do?
certainly have not heard the president say that, but what I will tell you is 2/3 of Americans have lost faith in the Department of Justice. And it's statements like that, I believe,
Ms.
that make
Bondi.
people continue to lose faith. If I am confirmed as Attorney General, it will be my job
Getting
to
on
not
to my
only
next
keep
question,
America
you're not
safe,
responding.
but but restore integrity to that department.
Why don't we
And that's
move
what
on
I
to
plan
something
on
that
doing
you said?
every single day as Attorney General.
On August 25th, 2025, on Fox News, you said, when Republicans, prosecutors will be prosecuted. Once the investigators will be investigated. Ms. Bondi, is Jack Smith
When
one of those
Republicans-
bad prosecutors that you will prosecutors will be prosecuted? Once the investigators will be investigated. Ms. Bondi, is Jack Smith one of those bad prosecutors that you will prosecute as AG?
Senator, you hesitated a bit when I said the bad ones. Every decision will
Sometimes
be
badness
made
in the eyes of the beholder. I'm just asking whether you would consider Jack Smith
Senator,
to be one of the people. How about Liz Cheney?
Senator,
How about Merrick Garland?
I am not going to medicals. No one has been prejudged, or nor will
I
anyone
am
be
asking
prejudged
whether
if I am
these are the
confirmed.
kind of people, these are in fact the people that you would prosecute. I'm not getting an
Your
answer.
time is up. Would you like to?
My time is,
Would you like to
Mr.
respond?
Chairman, she is clearly not going to answer that question, so let me get on to,
Would you like to?
I do have
I'd love to
questions for
respond.
the second round.
You'll have a second round. Would you like to speak before I call on Senator Cruz?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Bondi, welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
your long career in public service, and thank you for your willingness to take on this incredibly important office. You know, I have to say, I don't know that there is a more important position in this new administration than the position to which you have been nominated, Attorney General of the United States. I thought the exchange just a moment ago with Senator Hirono was illustrative. She asked you how you would respond if the president asked you to target his political enemies. It's rather striking because it's not a hypothetical. It has happened over the last 4 years. And I think perhaps the most tragic legacy of the Biden-Harris administration has been the politicization and the weaponization of the United States Department of Justice. And we don't need to ask hypothetically because Joe Biden publicly mused and allowed the New York Times to report it, calling on Merrick Garland, why will he not prosecute Trump more quickly? And Merrick Garland, sadly, he sat in that chair and promised to be apolitical, and he broke that promise almost the instant he walked into the Department of Justice. If you look on the west pediment of the Supreme Court of the United States, just above the entrance, there's a simple yet profound four-word phrase, equal justice under law. We have seen over the last 4 years a Department of Justice that systematically targeted the political opponents of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that systematically protected his friends and allies. And it is tragic to see the loss of confidence in the American people, in the Department of Justice, and in the FBI. I would note, I don't think there's an institution in America who has lost more respect from the American people than the FBI has in the last 4 years. That is a grotesque violation of the obligation of the Department of Justice and the FBI. So I want to start with just a very simple question. If you are confirmed as Attorney General, will you pledge to fairly and faithfully uphold the law regardless of party?
So help me God.
Amen. Look, and I want to be clear for folks at home. I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a Department of Justice that follows the damn law. And I think the American people do too. That shouldn't be too much to expect. Now, I'm grateful to President Trump for nominating you. I think on any objective level, you're clearly qualified for this position. You have been a prosecutor for decades. You have been the elected Attorney General of the state of Florida, the third largest state in America, for 8 years. Let me ask you, in terms of your practice, how many criminal cases over the course of your career have you personally handled?
Handled thousands.
How many of those were before a jury?
Hundreds. I don't want to overstate, but hundreds. I was in a courtroom for many years. I tried 4 when I was an intern, jury trials. I think you had to try at least 20 in misdemeanor before you went to felony. Then you were in court every day, and I was also lead trial attorney for many years trying many cases, so.
And how many of those cases would have been before a judge?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds as well, but hundreds before a jury, I would assume.
And as Attorney General of Florida, how many lawyers did you supervise roughly?
Approximately 400, Senator.
Now, I also want to clarify something. During the course of this hearing, several Democrat senators have referred to you as President Trump's, quote, personal lawyer. Now I don't believe that is an accurate characterization. As I understand it, you represented President Trump as a White House special advisor during his first impeachment trial. Is that correct?
Within Office of White House Counsel, yes, Senator.
And is working within the White House counsel's office different than representing Donald J. Trump individually as his personal lawyer?
Absolutely.
How's it different?
You're working for the government. You're working for the Office of White House Counsel. You're not representing him in his personal capacity.
And so you have not represented him in his business affairs, in his personal life, or in any of the criminal trials he has faced?
No, Senator.
And you know, when it comes to weaponization, it's worth noting that in more than 2 centuries of our nation's history, no president had previously been indicted, no president had previously been prosecuted until the Biden-Harris White House came along. And in the last 4 years, we've seen Donald Trump indicted and prosecuted not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 separate times.
And 2 assassination attempts, Senator.
I have to say, Javert from Les Mis would be chagrined at the efforts of Democrats to do anything possible to take him down. And I believe the real target in this was not President Trump, but it was the American people, that these prosecutions were brought because partisan prosecutors were terrified that the American people would do exactly what they did in November of 2024 and vote to reelect Donald J. Trump.
By 77.3%. Million Americans, 77.3 million Americans.
Will you commit every day as Attorney General to follow the law, to follow the Constitution, to uphold the rule of law without favor and without regard to the partisan position of any criminal defendant?
Yes, Senator.
That's what we should all expect from an Attorney General. Thank you.
We'll now recess for 30-minute lunch break. That means we'll be back at 12:25. And when we resume, Senator Booker will be recognized.
I creative Central Asia is to repeal the Jackson-Vanik label on the region and extend permanent normal trade relations with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. I realize you have a lot of priorities on your plate when you will be confirmed as our secretary, but I would say rescinding it would be a good faith indication of the Jackson-Vanik requirements that Central Asia needs right now to grow. My question is, would you work with me and Senator Peters to have your team work with us to remove this designation?
Yeah, and I believe the permanent removal will require legislative action. I don't think Senator Murphy has a bill on that as well. Yours is 3 countries. Look, I think this is a relic of an era that's passed. There are some that argue that we should use it as leverage for human rights concessions or leverage to get them to go stronger in our way as opposed to Russia and the like. But I think in some cases it's an absurd relic of the past. I think it's Kazakhstan, who the Department of Commerce has already said is a market economy. In fact, I think they hosted the WTO ministerial just a couple years ago. So it's just they've met the conditions.
Yeah, it's something
so we will work with you on this because I think it's important.
Thanks, Mark. I think it's a neglected part of the world. I look forward to working with Senator Murphy on this. You know, that C5+1, which is Central Asian countries plus the United States. Hope we can work with President Trump actually to think about maybe hosting some kind of a summit there. Very strategic. After the withdrawal from Afghanistan, we need more friends in Central Asia, and look forward to working with you on that. In the time I have left, when I open up my comments, talked about all these conflicts around the world, sometimes we forget some of the most important relationships are right in our backyard, thinking about Mexico. With the nearshoring going on at the moment, a lot of production coming now into more of our time zone and hemisphere coming from China and so forth. Laredo, Texas is now the largest port in the United States. I think it's one of the underreported facts in our country. You talked about the cartels. They have command and control, certainly on the border at the moment. My question is, you think about Mexico, and you've been so active on Latin America and looking south of the United States, with President Sheinbaum now just coming into office. What are your thoughts around how do we become better engaged with Mexico to help them with their issue as it relates to the cartels, basically, which are running the country, it seems at times?
Well, and I wish we had more than 30 seconds to do it because it's one of those issues that I think don't get enough attention beyond the problems. Look, Mexico's economy in many ways is a very vibrant one and has made tremendous advances and continues to be a very strong regional power. They can become frustrating at times for us because they have enshrined even in their constitution, a sort of non-aligned, non-interventionist foreign policy with regards to some of the abuses. And so it's been disappointing, for example, to see the position they've taken with regards to Venezuela and others. By the same token, our economic interests are so deeply intertwined. I think there are three areas of friction. The first is on trade and violations of trade agreements and so forth that have been laid out, and some of the things that I've seen, even as a senator from Florida in the agricultural sector, that are going to continue to be an irritant in our relationship that we hope we can resolve. The second is the security situation at the border. And I think there's great interest and should be on the part of the Mexicans to bring this migratory problem at the border under control. People forget an increasing number of cases. The people crossing the border are not Mexican nationals. They are people that are transiting through Mexico. And in fact, in southern Mexico, you have seen a significant uptick in resentment against migration by Mexicans who are bearing the brunt of the costs of becoming a key element of the migratory path. And the third is the violence. And this violence at our border has to be addressed. I think they pose a threat to the United States, most certainly. The flooding us with fentanyl, the criminal activities occurring within the United States, facilitated by these groups who have become vertically integrated. These are not the Colombian cartels. These transnational groups are now vertically integrated. They are the suppliers all the way down to the street level and all the way up to the production level. They are vertically integrated criminal enterprises, but they are also threatening the sovereignty and security of the Mexican state. And as I pointed, there are journalists and there are politicians who have been assassinated for standing up to these cartels. And it tells you the amount of leverage so they have over the government as a result of it. So it is in their interest as well as ours that we work cooperatively to take these groups apart and not allow them to continue their reign of terror, not just in the border region of Mexico, but spilling over into the United States.
Thanks, Marco.
Thank you very much for the edification of the committee. I've just been advised that there's been a ceasefire announced in Gaza. Before we all celebrate, though, obviously we're all going to want to see how that executes. With that, Senator Murphy, you're up, and then we're going to take that short break.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That is indeed good news. Senator Rubio, I want to talk to you about a topic that I think is going to be real trouble for you and for U.S. national security interests, at least for the first few minutes of my time, and that's the growing personal financial entanglement of President Trump, his family, and Middle East governments. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. For nearly 8 years, the Trump organization has been pursuing a real estate deal to build a hotel complex in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. During President Trump's first term, the Trump organization actually voluntarily committed to refrain from pursuing real estate deals with foreign companies, especially those that are backed by foreign governments. And so the deal didn't go through. And then it remained stalled for the entirety of the Biden administration. And then magically, 30 days after the November election, Saudi Arabia's biggest construction company that's affiliated with the government announced that the deal was going forward alongside an additional $200 million deal for a Trump property in Oman. Now, it used to be that somebody with these big financial business interests would come into government and take actions like setting up a blind trust or divestment in order to make sure there was no connection between their personal financial interests and the business they were conducting in government. But President Trump has just done the opposite, right? Over the last 8 years, while he was in office and since he's been out of office, he and his family have become more deeply dependent on revenue from governments in the Middle East. During his last presidency, Middle East interests sent about $10 million to Trump properties. After he left office, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who was his primary Middle East envoy, was handed $2 billion in investment by the Saudis, even though a Saudi investment board said the investment was a bad business decision. That investment actually comes up for renewal in 2026, giving the Saudis massive leverage over the Trump family. And then to make matters worse, right after the election, the Trump organization said that in this term, the president-elect's second term, it would drop its previous prohibition on doing new deals in the Middle East with private foreign companies aligned with foreign governments. So the Trump organization is going to be signing new business deals in the Middle East with private companies that have connections to foreign governments at the very moment that you are going to be conducting sensitive diplomacy in these countries. That's just extraordinary. Never before in the history of this country has a president been, literally receiving cash from foreign governments and from foreign companies that are backed by foreign governments in the middle of their term. If you or I had done this as senators, we would be in violent violation of Senate ethics rules. That's not permitted on the Foreign Relations Committee. And so I guess my question to you is a pretty simple one. Do you see how this fundamentally compromises your diplomatic efforts? Do you have an issue, or will you raise an issue with the president about his growing financial connection with the governments that you're going to be negotiating with?
Well, first of all, I am neither authorized nor in any position to give you sort of any insights into any of these arrangements you've pointed out. You mentioned Jared Kushner as an example. He's a private citizen, happens to be a Floridian. I don't know what, if any, engagement he has in the work that's going on now. I can tell you what I know. Obviously, I'm not in the State Department yet, but I can tell you as an example, the president's envoy to that region, who is charged, Steve Witkoff, who is charged with being an envoy towards reaching an accommodation between the Israelis and the Saudis, has been working cooperatively and together with the Biden administration. And in fact, I dare to say that all involved deserve credit for the ceasefire that the chairman's just announced.
Hi, Don, you're back on the stream.
Component of it, and he has been involved in it from day one. I think the broader consideration about whether we want to see—
You're muted right now.
Did you find anything to go with our breaking news?
I'm still looking.
Okay, stand by, guys. I have some breaking news as we listen to Marco Rubio, who is probably the most traditional Republican of them all. And so we'll listen to him for a bit, and then I'll give you the breaking news. Stand by 1 second.
I also think it's going to be important for the Saudis and others to be participants in post-conflict stabilization efforts in Gaza and beyond. So all I can tell you is that what I've said from the very beginning, from the opening statement, and that is our foreign policy is going to be driven, as the President's made abundantly clear, by whether some action makes America is in the interest of the United States and our national security. And that's what it's going to be driven by, and that's how all these policies should be judged by, and that's certainly the job that I believe I've been tasked with executing on.
Well, let me then simply ask you this question. Do you believe that the president should refrain from doing new business deals with Middle East governments during his term in office?
Well, my understanding, again, I'm speaking out of turn, but the president doesn't manage that company. His family members do, and they have a right to be in the business. I mean, that's the business that they're in. They're in the real estate business. They've been for a very long time, both domestically and abroad. They have properties in multiple countries. So at the end of the day, I don't know, his family is entitled to continue to operate their business. The fundamental question is not whether his family is involved in business. The fundamental question is whether that is in any way impacting the conduct of our foreign policy in a way that's counter to our national interest. And the president's made abundantly clear that every decision he makes and every decision we are to make at the State Department should be driven by whether or not it serves the core national interests of the United States. And that's how I hope our policies will be judged by, not what business his family is conducting while the president is here in Washington working not on his business, but from the Oval Office.
You are correct. That is the fundamental question, whether or not a policy is being pursued in U.S. national security interests or due to the president's personal financial interests. That is the reason why, as United States senators, we are not allowed to have complicated existing financial arrangements with foreign governments, because you do not want to create the impression that there is a conflict of motivation. And I just wished that this president applied to this incoming administration the same rules that we hold ourselves to as United States senators. Senator Rubio.
Okay, so here we go. As we'll keep this on in the background, but this is some major breaking news that we need to tell you about. And you're looking at live pictures now. This is Gaza that you're looking at. And according to the Associated Press, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire in Gaza and to release dozens of hostages after more than 15 months of war. Again, and this, we'll put it up on the screen. We'll put it up in the graphics on the screen. But a ceasefire has been announced, according to the Associated Press and other news organizations, in Gaza after 15 months of war. Any deal is expected to pause the fighting, bring hopes for winding down the most deadly and destructive war Israel and Hamas have ever fought, a conflict that has destabilized the Middle East and sparked worldwide protests. Again, major breaking news. This was the Trump administration had wanted this, we know, to happen on their watch. They had wanted this to happen on their watch. I think Donald Trump had wanted his opening salvo, so to speak, to be at least a ceasefire, and also to bring an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. But Hamas okays draft agreement on the Gaza ceasefire and the release of some hostages, officials say. Hamas has accepted a draft agreement, we're saying, for dozens for a ceasefire in Gaza, the release of dozens of hostages. Two officials involved in the talks said on Tuesday. Mediators from the United States and Qatar said Israel and the Palestinian militant group were at the closest point yet to sealing a deal. So again, and I believe the latest update, though, is that the agreement is now official. That is according to Hamas, Qatari and Hamas officials. And so that is the very latest that we have. But this is indeed breaking news. This has been going on for, as we said, 19 months, since October 6th of 2023. And again, that's a breaking news. I was in the middle of doing an interview for something else as this breaking news came across. And remember, we're watching the hearing going on for the appointees on Capitol Hill. But there you go. The breaking news is now happening, and a Gaza ceasefire deal announced. That is the report. How do you guys feel about that, folks who are part of the Lemon Nation and our members? Because these hearings now, Marco Rubio is done. You know what the schedule is. I would imagine that you guys, regardless of how you feel about this, folks are happy. Anthony Blinken has been trying to get a deal done, and he is. Thank you for happening on Biden's watch, says Creative Growth. Trump can take credit for the first moon landing, but it doesn't make it true. Okay. So I would imagine that Donald Trump will try to take credit for it. He will say, because he's going to be president of the United States, that they did it. Folks are also thanking Joe Biden. Thank you, Joe Biden, again, but it is happening on Joe Biden's watch. We'll get the intricate details of it. So there you go. Okay. Okay, a ceasefire. And look, I got to just tell you this before. I'm not going to go into news guy like my old cable news where I would be like, and here are the details. I'm really happy about this. This has separated and divided so many people. This was very influential on the election in the United States. This is good news for both, for folks who have been using the word genocide, saying that this is a genocide. This will obviously, the people who are there won't have to face, hopefully, this barrage of this onslaught of just bullets and wars and losing their loved ones and children. And I see you guys are all in the comments and you're all saying, thank you, Blinken, thank you, Biden. And regardless of what you want to say, it has happened on this watch. And I think this is, can you imagine tonight? Think about this, okay? Think about this. President Biden is giving his farewell speech tonight. And he can give that farewell speech and say, oh my gosh, this is how I'm ending my term, my administration, by bringing an end to a war with a peace agreement on a peaceful note. Now, let's see what happens with Russia. Perhaps he'll be able to do something with Russia and Ukraine before he leaves office. Huge, huge news. How do you guys feel about that? Lots of thank yous for the president and for Tony Blinken. This is good for the world. This is good for everyone who is involved in this. That is our breaking news. And I'm so happy that this is happening at all. I don't care whose watch it happened on, but it happens to be happening on Joe Biden's watch at the end of Joe Biden's term as president of the United States. Israel and Hamas agreed to a provisional outline of a Gaza ceasefire. Let me read this. This is from a New York Times report, okay? Again, this is just coming in. Negotiators have yet to confirm a start date and other technical issues could still derail a deal. Again, this is the initial agreement, okay? It could still be derailed, but this is the initial agreement. The initial agreement. Let's see what we have here.
To Israel. We will be watching to see the
Here's a special report. Let's put it up.
What we know is
Let's
that
put the special report from CBS. Let's put it
For
on.
us from Jerusalem. For more on all this, Robert, thank you so much for being with us. What can you tell us about this possible deal that sounds like we might have an agreement on?
We finally, it looks like we have an agreement. That's according to sources here in Israel, the Palestinians, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and also sources in the United States. Now, we already know what this deal looks like. There will be a 6-week ceasefire during which 33 Israeli hostages will be freed in exchange for about 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. Now, it's important to note that of these 33 Israeli hostages, that includes both living and dead. And at this point, we don't have their names, so we don't know how many will be alive and how many dead. But certainly, it's a big breakthrough. It will last for 6 weeks if all goes well. But keep in mind that there are 98 Israeli hostages altogether in Gaza. So this only includes 33. Negotiations on a second phase, which would see the release of the remaining hostages, would take place, start about 16 days into the agreement.
So how quickly could we see these hostages be released? Did they give any indication of that?
What I'm hearing from Israeli media is that this could happen as early as Sunday. 3 Israeli hostages expected to be released. Not clear who they would be, probably women. By the way, of these 33, it would be women, children, and men over the age of 50.
And what can you tell us about the Palestinian prisoners being held in Israel that will be released?
Well, that would include women, and minors, but also, according to what I'm hearing in Israeli media, And by the way, the names haven't been released yet, but it would include 250 what you might call hardcore prisoners serving life sentences for acts of terrorism against Israel. Of course, that is a big security concern for the Israelis.
This is news that so many people have been waiting months for. We're standing by, waiting for a special report. That's going to happen just moments from now, Robert. But I want to keep you on the line. I mean, how big of an issue, how big of a deal is this ceasefire agreement for this, this part of the country?
I mean, it's huge, right? You know, the war's been going on for something like 465 days, right? So there was an early prisoner release at the beginning of the war back in November, more than a year ago, when about over 100 hostages were released. And since then, there's been all kinds of efforts to win their release, but they haven't come home. So
here's a special report from CBS.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Errol Barnett. We have breaking news for you coming out of the Middle East. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire and hostage deal after 15 months of war. This deal comes after many months of negotiations brokered through the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar. This chapter of the conflict began, you may remember, when Hamas orchestrated a terror attack on Israeli soil back in October of 2023. That killed 1,200, and they took another 250 people hostage. Nearly 100 hostages are still inside Gaza, and at least a third are believed to be dead. Now, the Hamas-led attack also led to an Israeli military invasion into Gaza that killed more than 46,000 Palestinians. We want to bring in Face the Nation moderator and our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Margaret Brennan, who has been working the phones to get the latest information on this. Margaret, tell us, what is part of this agreement?
This is a breakthrough deal, as you just described it. It's also going to be incredibly difficult to implement. But what it could mean is that as soon as this weekend, as soon as Sunday, you could see hostages released from Gaza, handed over by Hamas back to Israel. We will be watching to see the implementation of this. What we know is that on paper, Hamas and Israel have agreed to a deal that has multiple stages. The first phase, perhaps the most important.
What we're going to do, you're listening to the CBS report, and we thank Margaret Brennan, and we thank the folks over at CBS. But here's what we're going to do. I have to go over and do my National Press Club thing. And if you're looking, if you're hopefully you're watching and you are paying attention to this, I have been watching the Qatari officials are about to hold a press conference on this ceasefire, and we're going to get to that. 5 o'clock, join us, okay? So we'll let you go and find out some of the news. I got to get to my event, so we appreciate you joining us. Thank you, community. Thank you, Lemon Nation. We will all see you soon, a little bit later on at 5 o'clock, okay? So have a great day. Good news. Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, Tony Blinken. Hit the thumbs up, hit the likes, and we'll see you soon, okay? Bye, guys. Love you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never, ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love.